Hello and welcome to the Supernatural Track here at Continual. I'm your host, Gail Z Martin, and my dog, Daxter. And we're going to be talking about the must-watch episodes of season 14. But before we do that, let's let our wonderful panelists introduce themselves, starting with Elektra.
I'm Elektra Hammond. I'm a writer and an editor, and I started watching Supernatural when the pilot aired, and I watched it all the way through till that very last episode just made me cry.
Melissa and Kitty.
Hi, I'm Melissa. I have been a fan also from the night the pilot aired in 2005. Kitty is a relatively newcomer. She's only been a fan since 2020, but that's okay because that's when she was born.
Okay, Lola.
My name is Lola Lariscy. I just let my real name slip. Oops, you will not remember. You will not remember. Anyways, so I'm Lola Lariscy. I have been watching Supernatural since I wasn't quite middle-aged, which was almost 20 years ago. Okay,
Those think we all. All right.
All right.
So let's talk. Yes, a lot happened in season 14. And so let's talk about some of our favorite episodes. They may not necessarily be the ones that move the plot forward. They may not necessarily be the most earth-shattering, but they're the ones that we think if you could only pick the very, very best episodes of season 14, you would pick. So Elektra, give us our first one.
Well, my favorite episode from this season, and the ones that if it's on TV, I absolutely always watch, is Lebanon. Lebanon has all the feels. This is the episode where the boys find a pearl that gives them their greatest desire. And they may not know it, but Dean's greatest desire is to have the family back together and to be able to do things like sit around the dinner table and have a meal and just quiet conversation with just the four of them, Mom and Dad and Sam and Dean. And it's just so, as normal as a family of hunters can be. And it breaks your heart when you realize that in order for that to happen, so many other things that they did are going to go away that they cannot let it stand. It's one of those time travel sort of kind of almost, we're warping the timeline to bring your dad here. So no, you can't really have him and you can't keep him, but they gave us a little glimpse of what life would be like and it was the family life they never had.
And Jeffrey Dean Morgan played the part so well on that. On the
He
way,
did.
You mean you're living in an underground bunker with an angel and the devil's son? Yeah, Dad, that's kind of it.
Well,
it's like he never left.
Well, and he took that pretty well, given that he didn't really know that angels existed, and he did okay. He always hit the ground running.
But the look on his face when he heard Mary's voice,
Yeah.
that was just great stuff by JDM. He did good with that.
And JDM is just a fantastic freaking actor. Among other things, I cannot wait until we see more of him in The Boys, among other things. So he rocks my world anyway.
Be careful how you phrase see more of him after we just saw of Chuck.
Well, there's that, yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, that episode just gets me in all the feels. And I will not talk about any episode as much as I did about that one, but that one just it gets me every time. And I watch it every time and I cry.
It's a landmark. It is an absolute landmark. And I think it's the 300th episode too, isn't it?
Yeah, oh yeah, it's definitely a round number episode.
Mhm.
And it's getting me now because I've got some friends who live in Lebanon, Pennsylvania, and I go there fairly frequently now. And if
Mhm.
you don't think that's freaky, no, it totally is. We're going to
Mhm.
Lebanon. Yeah. It's like an hour drive for me.
Yeah, I've been there many times and like the bologna too.
There's nothing there.
No.
Lebanon, Pennsylvania, there's like nothing. I mean, the only good restaurant is not there. So yeah, it's the next town over. It's in Myerstown.
Okay. Melissa.
Before I start with mine, I want to piggyback off of Electra's. Lebanon was great because there's this one scene. John, first of all, it's remarkable because I don't hate John in this one.
He wasn't parenting.
Well, he and Dean are in the kitchen and they're doing dishes, or I think they're doing dishes. They're standing at the sink, and John says, I always wanted you to have a family. And Dean comes back with, I have a family. And that line just always right in the feels. But that's not the episode I'm going to talk about. I'm going to talk about profit and loss. We get Donatello back, and there's a bunch of stuff that happens and yada, yada, yada. I don't really care about that because I care about the ending, Sam and Dean and the Impala. There's so many really great, there's such a great conversation that I have to read it because it's so powerful. Sam is trying to convince Dean not to go into the Moloch box because Dean believes that that's the only way that he can prevent Michael from destroying the world. So Sam says to him, we're the guys who saved the world. You don't just check out of it. And Dean's like, I've got one card left to play and I have to play it. Sam, you've got one card today, but we'll find another tomorrow. But if you quit on us today, there'll be no more tomorrow. I believe in us, Dean. Why don't you believe in us too? And it's this, first of all, Jared and Jensen nailed the acting on this. It's amazing. You can see all of the emotions playing on Dean's face. He doesn't want to die. He doesn't want to be trapped with Michael in a box under the ocean for the rest of eternity. And Sam just manages to convince him. And in this one, Sam isn't grieving the way he kind of was with the deal, the Crossroads deal, when he knew he was going to lose Dean. He's angry. He's angry that Dean is giving up. I believe in us. Why don't you believe in us? That's such a powerful, powerful line. And he convinces Dean to not give up today. And then Dean says something that I think is I don't know that they planned it that way, but in hindsight, it's a foreshadowing for this series ending, the scene in the barn. Dean tells Sam, if that day comes, Sam, you have to take it for what it is, the end, and you have to promise me that you'll do then what you can't do now and let me go. If you think about, and I'm going to talk about 15 for a second, I can't help it, I got to go there. Dean's scene in the barn, he's telling Sam to let him go, and Sam doesn't want to, and then Sam accepts it. And to me, it's like, I don't necessarily, this scene makes that scene a little bit more plausible because Dean is telling him here, hey, when my end comes, you have to accept it and you have to let me go. And in that scene in the barn, Dean's telling him, you got to let me go, Sam. And Sam's like, I don't want to, but he still does. So I think that even whether it was intended or not, those two scenes really fit nicely together. And I didn't really notice it until I went back and did some homework for this episode.
Well, and this is an episode that Jared had a lot of difficulty with, that scene by the car, because he really struggled with how to play it and with the emotion of it. And I think this was one of those where after they played it, he had to go walk it off, because when he finally found where to draw from, it was just, he really was upset in addition to the acting. And so, yeah. And you can tell there have definitely been those scenes where the guys have talked about they
bleed.
they bleed, that the emotion they called to the forefront was real for them as well as Sam and Dean. And that was definitely one of them. And Jared just brought his A game as always. Lola?
All right, I'm going to piggyback on Lebanon for a minute, but then I got my own to do. So with Lebanon, there are some great quotes that I love. Well, one quote and one scene. All right, I love the quote where Dean, because I love serial killer stuff. I don't know why I'm terrified of them, but I love it anyways. And there's this one quote where Dean says about the John Wayne Gacy goes, you know, I love serial killers, but I hate clowns. So that was a conundrum. He hated clowns, not serial killers, clowns. And then I love the scene where Dean comes in and smoozes with the post office lady because Sam struck out. She was not giving Sam the time of day. And Sam's looking like this. And the post office lady's like, what? You're not Dean. So that was awesome. So, but I'm just going to talk about the scar for just a minute. It's one of the ones where Dean had just stopped being Michael's out of his head. So Dean's trying to get, back in the flow of things, and he hasn't seen Sam in a while. So Dean plays this so straight that I had no idea where it was going until Sam piped up. So Dean comes out of his room and he just says, it's just every time I think about it, it's like a nightmare. I mean, I can't eat, I can't sleep. It's always just there watching. And Sam says, Dean, it's just a beard. Okay, I've been a little busy lately. And then Dean says, yeah, well, that's not an excuse, because Duck Dynasty called and they want it all back. And that just cracks me up. I love that.
Okay. I love Mint Condition. Now, this is one of the fluffier episodes in the show. It isn't as dire as several that we've talked about. And that's one of the things I love about it is the comic relief that kind of gets you laughing right before they push you off a cliff.
Mm-hmm.
But we've got a killer mannequin of a serial killer from a horror franchise of movies and a comic book shop with a ghost. And Sam and Dean have both found terrific foils in the girl who owns the comic book shop and one of the guys who works there. And I love anytime we get to see Dean just being a fanboy and talking about something he enjoys. There is this pure, unadulterated love of the slasher fix, the All Saints night slasher movies that this character is from. And it's a big talking mannequin that comes to life. But Dean and the guy who works in the comic shop are just comparing notes, and it's, oh yeah, but then in number 3 he does this, and then did you see in the second episode, in the second part of number 2, he said something that shows up in number 4, and it's just total geekgasm, like you do when you are with your people who like the same thing you like. And we get to see Dean that happy so rarely that it's just wonderful when it happens and we get to see him enjoying just being a fan of something. And of course, all of his knowledge about it helps him defeat the haunted mannequin. And then Sam is a real match with the comic book store owner in terms of, again, geeking out over all their favorite things and just kind of having a lot in common in terms of being a total nerd for all the good things. And Sam has to make a bomb on the fly with a Scooby-Doo lunch pail and common cleaning supplies, as one does, blows the door off. And they just had such good chemistry together, no pun intended, him and the girl, talking about things that they loved. And I love those moments when we get to see the boys, aside from whatever monster of the week they're chasing or apocalypse they're outrunning, where we get a glimpse of what they did all the rest of the time in between nearly world-ending catastrophes. And clearly it was watching monster movies and that Busman's Holiday. I mean, when you fight the real thing, these have got to be kind of cheesy and funny. So back to you, Elektra.
Stranger in a Strange Land. First, I have a very tight connection with the title, which I will talk about at some other time. But Dean/Michael, Dean is possessed and he's been missing 3 weeks. And everybody else is shaking out. They've all stepped up to deal with the fact that there's a void because there's this enormous Dean-shaped hole. Sam is running things. Bobby is, alternate world Bobby is training Jack, and Castiel is demanding info from demons, trying to figure out where the heck Dean is. Sister Joe is trying to, figure out what she can get out of the deal. So she's, talking to Michael and seeing, well, maybe, where's her place going to be after he takes over our version of Earth? And, Nick is trying to figure out how to deal with the fact that he's no longer possessed. Everybody is just starting to move on. And they do a really good job of weaving those stories together. And that is one really solidly packed, 42 minutes of TV where a whole lot happens. Even Ketch, he's gone to London to see what he can find out. People are everywhere and there's a lot of moving parts. And it's a really intense season opener for the whole, Michael went back on his word and stole Dean away from us, and we're Deanless. And yet a lot is happening and the world goes on, and we see the idea of Sam without Dean. Well, hunting is going to still happen. Monsters will still be caught. They will still go after the big bad, even if it's Dean. Sorry,
Okay.
it's just good writing.
Okay. Melissa.
I'm gonna go with this episode as well because I've got other stuff that I have in my notes. This is a great Mary Winchester A+ parenting scene in this episode. Sam comes in and he asks Mary if she's been in to talk to Nick, and she says, "Oh no, I didn't talk to him. I could barely look at him." Okay.
Somebody get her a fainting couch, please.
Please, woman, please. You are a mother. Sam was locked in hell with Lucifer for years. And I know that Nick isn't Lucifer, at least not yet, but he looks the same. It's the same body. It's the same voice. Woman, do your job as a mother and go in there and talk to him. Take care of Nick. Do the stuff that Sam went into tend his wounds and to look at him and blah, blah, blah. Why couldn't she do that? Please. Why couldn't she do that? I rewatched this episode a couple of weeks ago and I was absolutely like throwing things at the screen. I was so mad at Mary. And then, of course, Sam goes in and he's taking care of Nick and blah, blah, blah. And we find out that he's actually trying to pump Nick for information for where Dean might be, because like, do you know, Lucifer knows Michael. Was there any connections there? Did you know anything? Why couldn't Mary? But the reason I want to watch this episode is because we get Bamf Sam. Sam goes to rescue Castiel, and he's a complete badass, and he rescues Cass, and he challenges the demon, and he says, you're no Crowley, which of course is not. And there will be no new king of hell. If anyone wants the job, they can come through me. And again, this is one of those, I don't know if they planned it this way, but there was no new king of hell. And instead of the queen of hell having to go through Sam, it's kind of like Sam had to go through Rowena, kind of, because he had to stab her, blah, blah, blah. But I thought that when I watched it, I was like, yeah, there was no new king. There was a queen, but Sam was absolutely telling the truth in that episode. So I loved it, and thanks, Elektra, for picking
It's
it, because I could
foreshadowing.
then talk about it. Yeah, I don't know if I'm going to give the writers credit for that or not, but we'll pretend that I planned it
We'll pretend that they did that intentionally.
intentionally. That's where all
There's also that whole thing about how Sam was maybe going to be the Prince of Hell
Prince of Hell.
and all of that. And
our boy King of Hell.
right. And
I
obviously he was the one that, they were going to come to, because, the boys have been steadily working their way through the Knights of Hell and the Princes of Hell and arranging for them to no longer be with us. And
I am
the demons are starting to say, well, maybe we should check with the Winchesters, because Crowley lasted for a while because he was buddies with them.
I'm gonna pretend that everything in this season that looks like foreshadowing actually was intended. I'm just gonna go with that.
That's always a good idea, because generally, if you ask the writers about it in the future, they'll say, oh yeah, we totally meant to do that.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I always do. Yeah, I did that on purpose. Right, Gail?
Absolutely. Well, writing from the subconscious.
Yeah. I knew I was going to do that later, so I threw in some foreshadowing.
That's right. That's right. Lola?
All right. Optimism, episode 6. So this one has 2 stories. We've got Charlie and I want to say Sam. Is it Charlie and Sam? I've forgotten already. So we got them, and then we've got Dean in the other one. All right. One of the reasons I like this episode is, and I'm going to sound very old, but it's almost all in daylight, and I can see it very well. That's one of the reasons why I love it. Lots of outside shots. And the girl they have, so the story is there's a girl, and every time she gets close to a guy, he gets killed. And, everybody's like, oh, she's bad luck, poor girl, and so it's Sam. Yeah, it's Sam. No, Jack. It's Jack. Okay, Jack and Dean. Jack is trying to help her, and so she's acting like she's fallen in love with him. Do you believe in love at first sight and everything? And he's like, no, that's weird. But then you find out the tables are turned, and she's actually behind it all. It turns out her family, spoiler, is a family of necromancers. So I call her Necro Barbie, because she has long blonde hair and she looks like a Barbie, and she's really cute. But yeah, and she did a really good job. The actress did a really good job, because she seems like really like cute and a little bit like Becky, kind of like a chilled out Becky. Just like, I don't know why this is happening, but I love love. Look at my apartment. I have love everywhere. And then she turns and she's like, I did that on purpose. Ha 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 ha. So that was pretty cool. And then the other story with Charlie and
Sam.
It was Charlie and Sam. Guys, man, I'm getting mixed up. 2 stories in one episode is hard for me. But their monster was pretty cool. They had the fly. It was like a human fly, and it was really gross and scary. It looked like something like you'd see in a movie, like the fly. Oh, and there's another scene. There is a Twin Peaks reference. I don't know if the writers meant it, but in one of the scenes, Dean is in a diner. He's got his FBI suit, and he's drinking a big old piece of pie, eating a big old piece of pie, and drinking coffee. And I just went, Twin Peaks. So that's
They
why I like
absolutely did it on purpose.
Oh,
good.
I'm sure
It felt like it was on purpose. It really did.
If you ask them, they will tell you that.
whether they did or not.
Yep. Or are they just taking the suggestion? Yeah, I did that on purpose. Yeah.
They probably did. Game night. Now, game night has a couple of things going for it. First and foremost, we get rid of Mary. This is a good thing. If you ever needed proof that Mary never parented teenage boys, it would be the way she tries to handle Jack. She's after him for an answer. He walks away. She follows him and continues to badger him. And so Jack, omnipotent and all-powerful being that he is, just, tells her to be quiet, and she vanishes. Anybody who has raised teenagers, girls or boys, knows that if they could have done that to you when they were teenagers, they would have. So this is on Mary. but we got rid of her. Now, this causes some friction with Dean. Yeah, bye-bye. Jack feels guilty. This causes some friction with Dean. Sam's a little more forgiving. But I'm looking at it going, Mary, honey, you did this to yourself.
Mhm.
But the other piece in this is and this comes before the great Mary Puffing. They go off to see Donatello, and Nick is with them in the car, and he's supposed to be handcuffed. Of course, he gets out of the handcuffs, and there's this fight with Sam, and he smacks Sam on the head with a rock, and Sam's dying. Because of course he is, because Sam gets smacked in the head again. And Dean just has this amazing scene with Sam telling him to stay with them, to count, that it's going to be okay. And you can just see Dean's rising panic. And he finally gets Jack to come and fix Sam. And Jack does that and saves his life. But the scene with Dean as Sam is slipping away is just another one of those amazing moments. And then when Sam opens his eyes and takes a breath, Dean just jumps up and immediately turns his back and walks away like, I got to collect myself. I got to collect myself. And it's such a perfectly in character move to not show everything that he's feeling at that moment, because he's overwhelmed. He thought he had lost Sam. He's gotten him back. He needs a few seconds with his back turned to everybody to just collect it. And you can see it in his body language. It's just a perfectly done scene. Elektra?
Gods and Monsters. This is the second episode of the season. And there's a couple of things I really like about this. We start to see what Michael's plan is with the souped up vamps and werewolves. But more importantly for me, we see Nick go back to Pike Creek, Delaware. I'm sitting about 40 minutes away from Pike Creek right now in beautiful Delaware, where there's just no state identity whatsoever other than it's the home of Lucifer. And he goes back to Pike Creek to figure out what the hell happened with his family and why did it happen to me? What did I do that this happened to my family? And he starts an investigation into what happened on that night that he lost his family, to try and figure out why he ended up being the vessel for Lucifer. And that's a really important piece of this season. And it starts in this episode in Pike Creek. And the other just adorable thing before it goes terribly wrong later in the season is Jack goes to Kelly Klein's parents' house, and he has a really nice visit with his grandparents. He doesn't tell them they're his grandparents, but he pretends to be one of Kelly's interns and says he was a co-worker, and he meets them and he has this great visit with, his blood relatives, blood relatives that aren't from hell, nice normal folk. And he really, really enjoys it, getting away from, he's always been dealing with the hustle and the bustle and the hunting and law enforcement. And his whole life has just been kind of at a frenetic pace. And this was a nice, quiet stop where there was no hunting and no one trying to kill him and no one asking him to do something for them because he was powerful or magical or anything. It was just people who gave him coffee and cookies and were nice to him. And it was a nice break.
I think the qualifier of family that isn't from hell, really everybody can relate to. There's the family, there's the one side of the family, and then there's the family that isn't from hell. And I think we've all been there, but for Jack, it's a little more literal.
Tad literal.
Just a tad more literal. Melissa?
Nihilism. Blah, blah, blah. I don't care what goes on in this episode because there is one piece that I really do love. We see how Michael has Dean locked in his head, and Dean's got Rocky's bar, and he's working the bar with Pamela Barnes, and that was really cool. But it's Rocky's bar, and this is such an inside love letter to a certain segment of the fans because it's Rocky's bar, and it's the right thought, and it's the Rocky and Bullwinkle thing, and it's just, I gotta watch it just for that, because every time I see that sign, I fall off the couch laughing. And if you've ever seen one of these panels, you know I fall off the couch laughing all the time. But it's also a really cool acting job because Jensen's in this bar and he's happy, and it's just such, those scenes are partly amusing because it's like this inside joke, but it's also really like tense because Dean's trapped and Dean doesn't know he's trapped, and Sam is trying to get him out. All of that, but this is also the episode that sets up the fact that Billy lies, misrepresents, or tells the truth. We don't really know which one it is. Given what happens next season, I'm voting for she lies and tells Dean that the only way to prevent Michael from killing the entire world is to get into this Molly box with him and dump himself into the end of the ocean and lock himself away with Michael for the end of time. I'm voting that she's lying to him for this, but that's the thing that motivates Dean to once again sacrifice himself for the world. And it's an important piece in the back half of this the season's actions. You have to have that, otherwise you don't get those other scenes in Profit and Loss.
And just some of the visual jokes in Rocky's bar. There's that gold monkey that has shown up over and over
And
again.
over.
The taps on the behind the bar are from Family Business Brewing, Jensen's Brewery. I think there's a stuffed moose head on the wall, right?
I think so, yeah.
They're just all these visual clues that make it even better. So yeah, that's a great scene. And then Sam shows up and tells him Poughkeepsie. And with everything else, Dean's able to pull himself out of it just from Sammy showing up and making it clear that he needs him. So,
yep.
Lola?
Okay, so we're getting closer to my not quite as favorite, but they're still remarkable in their own way. Episode 18, Absence. All right, so this is after Mary's been killed, and I don't love Mary, but it's a good episode if you want to know what happened to Mary. And you get to see Jack dealing with this, knowing that he killed her, and he still wants to be in with the in crowd, and he's having fake Nick like coercing him all the time. But Rowena gets some great scenes. I love her scenes when she's having to lead Jack on, just kind of like keep him going while buying time for Dean and Sam to do all their stuff. So, and you can see like the pity in her eyes because she's trying to just kind of keep him going, and she's pretending to be making all this stuff that's going to supposedly bring back Mary. And you can see the pity in her eyes when she's like, that's not going to happen. So I liked it, Rowena. I hear a baby.
Did it get stuck on your earring?
Yeah, but she stopped. We like earrings. They're good and crunchy.
I bet they are.
Well, folks,
person with ketchup.
We have blown through our time and done a good service to some of the best of season 14. But before we wrap up, please let everybody know where we can find you. Elektra?
You can find me at untilmidnight.com, and I spend most of my social media time on Mastodon, where I am Elektra at wandering.shop. And look for my latest story to be out in July from ZNB in the magazine ZNB Presents Year 2.
All right. Melissa?
You can find me here on Continual Panels, and Katie's usually here. Tonight, I don't think she really dug season 14 as much as some of the other seasons. So we're sorry about that. There'll be more Kitty next time.
Well, we got a lot of Dax instead. It must have been his favorite. Lola?
My name's Lola Lariscy. You can find me online. You can just Google me. You'll find me and a bunch of old dead ladies. And I bet all of them like drinking coffee and eating pie, because I do.
Makes sense to me. And I'm Gail Z Martin and Morgan Bryce. And you can find me at the .coms of both of those. And if you spell them right, you'll find me on most of the social media. I think you've broken Melissa. And my newest book, Dead Man's Justice, the finale for the Assassins of Landria series, is out as of today. So very excited about that. All right, everybody. Thank you
awesome.
so much for being wonderful, wonderful panelists. And thanks to all of you for watching and listening. There will be more Supernatural coming up soon on Continual. So we'll see you online.